golden, soft, and loaded with those signature nooks and crannies. These homemade English muffins will make you a morning person. My next guest says this breakfast staple is surprisingly easy to make at home. Baker Madison Reid is sharing how things are coming back.
So simple.
She keeps saying how easy it is.
It really, really is.
Well, can you taste a difference in the homemade versus store-bought?
Yes, you totally can. You always can, because homemade is like fresh ingredients. Store-bought is always with extra preservatives added that are unnecessary to keep them fresh longer. So totally, making homemade is such a difference.
It's true.
Yes.
I'm going to admit it. You can.
Totally.
And how do we get them so light and airy? I'm guessing yeast.
Yes, yeast is the rising ingredient or agent in this recipe. I'm going to show you the ingredients really fast. So you start out with some milk at room temperature, a little bit warm to wake up that yeast, a little bit of water, and sugar, because yeast feeds on sugar and creates carbon dioxide, which is bubbly all throughout your dough. That's how it gets there.
Science lesson for us.
Yes, always. My whole blog is focused on the simple science that happens in the kitchen that makes it interesting and also brings you success.
It makes the difference.
Yeah, so this is instant yeast. Instant yeast is always my preferred yeast over active dry. The reason being is active dry yeast actually is dried so aggressively that half the yeast is dead. So it doesn't, you normally have to proof that yeast and make sure it's even going to work, where instant yeast is dried more carefully, and you can also add instant yeast right in with your dry ingredients. You don't necessarily need to proof it. But I like to proof it
more of a
always.
sure thing.
Yes, it is more of a sure thing. So I always choose instant yeast. But I am going to wake it up with a little bit of warm water, sugar, and milk. Mix in the yeast. And then it's very simple. You have some flour.
So we don't even need to let that sit at
No,
all.
no, because you don't have to proof it, because it's instant. So an egg, a little bit of salt, and some melted butter. That's it.
Really basic.
Yes, very basic. All things that you have in your pantry, most likely.
I never have yeast because I'm scared of it.
Oh,
but you've made me feel like,
yeast,
okay, if I use the instant kind.
Leave it in your fridge always so that it has a good storage space. And yeah, yeast is very, very simple. I think, a lot of people do get afraid of it because they have one or two bad experiences. And most of the time it's a dead yeast that they've had too long, or they didn't store properly in the fridge, or because they're using that dry active yeast or active dry yeast that is just aggressively dried.
Okay, so how many is this going to make for us?
This will make about 7 to 8, depending on how thick you roll it out. So yeah, it's a very shaggy dough. I like to knead it with another 1/4 cup until it's no longer sticky. See how that's stuck to me? But once I knead it in, it will no longer be sticky. But I don't think we have time, so we'll just move down the row.
Oh, you've already done it.
Yes, so this is the dough that I've already prepared. And you let it sit. This I rolled out, and then I cut it and I let it sit for 30 minutes, and it puffs up a little bit more.
So before you cut it out, let it sit 30 minutes.
After you cut it out, you let it sit.
Okay.
So you roll it out after you cut it out. So you cut it out with a 3-inch like cookie cutter or biscuit cutter, and you actually roll it in cornmeal. Cornmeal is like that very nostalgic.
So we're using this instead of flour?
Yes.
Okay.
For English muffins, they always have that crunchy outside exterior, and that's actually cornmeal. You roll it in cornmeal, and you actually cook it in cornmeal. So you cook it on your stove.
You don't use our oven.
No, so you have a cast iron, and you add a little bit more of this cornmeal, and that actually helps you not get direct heat from the
skillet.
But also helps it not stick. And the reason why you do this instead of the oven is because just like you get those crunchy exteriors but soft interiors, this is focusing the heat right on the exterior, and you put a lid on.
Are you packing this full of them when you're doing it for real?
I do 3.
Oh, just 3 at a time.
So let me show you how mine looks when I do it for real. Yep. So I do 1 here, because you want room to flip them.
Oh.
That's how many I do at a time.
You have to flip them.
You have to flip them. You cover it up so that it surrounds your English muffin in the heat and helps the rise with the yeast and puff up a little bit more. Cook it for 5 minutes, and then you flip it over.
Are you
for 5 more
preheating this
minutes.
then?
No, you just put it on,
Okay.
and I mean, it
Little
takes
bit.
like 5 minutes for it to get even heat around the whole cast iron, so not really. You're putting it on for just a few minutes before, making sure that your stove is hot. You actually cook this on low, and I learned this through air. If you go too high on your stove top, you will burn it. It has to be a very slow heat because it's touching the source of the heat.
And you've
I will
done
say,
jam and butter and
yes, you could
breakfast
do
sandwiches, all sorts
so
of
many things. My husband and I were like, should we go get bacon and eggs and all the things to show like a very extravagant sandwich? Because you could go all out, but I tend to just like the simple jam and butter. It's so delicious.
It is so good.
It's so good. Or you were saying
These
your
look
neighbor
amazing.
gives you honey.
Honey
would be
honey's
delicious
so good,
with that.
especially
so
homemade.
What is awesome about this is they're very quick, and they cook for 10 minutes total. You do need to watch your stove, your range. Some people's stovetop, especially mine's gas, it's very, very hot. So very low, but I cooked this one right before the show started, and this one being electric, it's a little bit less intense, so I had to turn up the heat higher than I thought. So you kind of have to
You gotta
play
know
with
your
it.
stove.
You gotta know your oven.
And
Yes.
she's not just a baker. She also makes candy. You're doing
Yes.
a Valentine's candy making class.
Yes, I am at the Holiday Market. It's in Holiday, Utah. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but they have lots of local small vendors, and I'm doing a candy class. I have one listed for Saturday, but it already sold out, so I opened another one for Thursday, and I'd love to see you there. I also was going to quickly show you, I don't know if you have time, how to cut this.
Real quick.
Okay, yeah, so you always use a fork to cut an English muffin. That's what gives it its signature nooks and crannies.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about.
You stab it all the way.
So don't do a knife.
Yeah, you don't use a knife.
I've been doing it wrong.
And then, you want to give it a try?
Ooh, yeah, sure. Ooh, it's warm too.
Yes.
I mean, that is amazing.
Yes, so much better, right?
Okay.
Than store-bought.
I'm hiring her to make me some.
No, they're easy.
Okay, we'll
can
link
do
you
it.
to her on our website.
Yes,
to all your...
mrsmaddie.com to find all these recipes and tips.
Thank you so much.